to order. It is 7:04. Call to order, regular meeting of the public hearing for Monday, December 2nd, 2024, Old Town Hall. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I don't think we ever had John do it at the same time. It's over.
Throw me off just there.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. All right, first things first, we're going to confirm the next meeting date. As a reminder, this is our regular December meeting. It's just early due to all the holidays and conflicts of getting a meeting space. So this is our regular December meeting. Therefore, our January meeting seems farther away, but it would be Thursday, January 28th. Thursday? I was reading that and I was like, Thursday.
January 28th is
It's a Tuesday.
Thank you.
Tuesday.
So the 28th is accurate. On our agendas, for the record, the agenda is a typo. Tuesday, not Thursday, but the date is correct.
Works for me.
In the event that our request would need to or want to come back, would that date work for you? If that, should we need to continue or you need to come before us? And Marguerite, you as well. Okay. Richard, that date work for you, I would imagine, that Tuesday? If needed, that Tuesday works for you?
I'm sorry,
If needed, that Tuesday works for you, the 28th?
sure.
Okay,
Who knows what I'll be doing that day?
okay. All right,
Sounds good right now, sir. I have nothing on my calendar.
all set. All right, so we will continue down to our review, discuss, and act, Stonegate Landing LLC, westerly side of Somerset Ave, map 9, status update of phase 1. Mr. Fedorov, whenever
Mr.
you
Chairman, members of the board, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Marguerite, everything else. Nice to see you again. Curious what happened on that accessory dwelling meeting you had, but it seems like, but I won't be asking about that. So I'd like to make a little presentation, is that I've been looking down, I've been thinking about this process we've all been going through. It started in March of 23. So that's 20 months ago. And we haven't gotten very far. I've cleaned up Stonegate. It's looking pretty good, taking care of the little things. We spent 4, 5, 6 months talking with neighbors about problems that Marguerite later told we didn't need to talk about, and that's all quieted down. But like one of the things you asked me when we met last in August was to reach out to the fire chief and the police chief, trying to resolve that one-way entrance. And then Marguerite asked me to send her the history of that and I sent her a big package that's dated December 2018. So the issue of the one-way in has been hanging around for 6 years now. We just need to make a decision, It's like, when I had that person wanted to buy Phase B, and they started the whole thing, and then everyone got in a roar, how dare he do that, whatever. So I finished what I was doing now, and I got 6 more lots, but I'm not pushing that. I think we got to get this done, but we also need a plan. One other thing you asked me to check on is to check with Sampson Watson about how to repair the road, the surface. And if you look, they did a nice job pointing out everything that was wrong, and really identifying everything that needs to be fixed, But in one paragraph, they have a paragraph that says that the problems with the surface need to be fixed before you pave. In another part, we talked at a meeting that even though the base is for a base that's been down for 20 years, it's in pretty good shape. And they did their borings, and they found that the plan called for was an 1.5-inch base, an 1.5-inch top, and they found that most of the base was 2 or 3 inches, and a few spots just 1 inch, and that's when you pave, okay? And that they acknowledged that the material under the road met standards back in 2004 and 2006. They don't meet today's standards. So the only way to get today's standards is to rip all the asphalt out, all the base, bring it all new stuff, roll it, pack it, do another, and if you had another a project that was done, except the roads and the roads are 20 years old, they'd have to be fixed too. But you wouldn't bring them up to standard. You have to go back to when it was first approved. And so I would like to start talking to pavers, okay, and start getting some prices for the spring. But I don't know what to tell them. I have no idea. I can't get a quote. I have the new contract from Watson Sampson, and their fee is $47,000. Okay, so they have identified everything that's wrong, and they did a great job. They gave us all the numbers to work with. The next thing is, installation and coming down here and being on site while the work's being done. Well, a lot of the work that needs to be done is pretty simple stuff. We're going to have to look at the base and see where it needs repair, come up with a plan and do it. We're only going to be ripping out a couple inches of asphalt in a small area. But they'll have 2 men down here, and I'll have to pay for them to drive down here, stay all day, and drive back. I'd like to suggest that we get Tom Ferry involved, okay? Tom has been in town forever. He knows roadways. He knows how to fix them. And if I could just work with Tom and have him come out, identify it, tell me how to do it, and then he's right down the street. So I get it dug out, he can stop by, and before we pave, he can stop by. It's a simple thing to do. But if we have to wait for them to come down and approve the base and then let you guys know, then get the paver, and it just runs the cost up dramatically. And I have to have an end game. If I'm going to have to spend $650,000 to fix the road, I got to make a business decision. I couldn't get enough money selling the land to pay for it. So I'd have to look at it and say, I'm a fool. All right, and I know the odd thing about this project is when it was improved, there was no bond paid. Back then, it's 20 years ago, the theory was that we'd build, Phase A through base coat. They released all the lots, and we've been building on them. And what the agreement says is that I can start Phase B and put all the roads in, but I can't build any houses there until Phase A is done. So they're going to use the back as security that I'd finish the front. But if I told you many times, I really have no interest in doing the back. I'd rather sell it and do something entirely different. But, so I have to look at this and say, okay, how are we going to deal with the front? First, we have to make decisions, okay, on the one-way in or out. We have to walk. Are we going to do the sidewalks? Are we going to plant trees? Are we going to do the school bus turnaround? And I just need to know what I'm going to have to do. So I got to put a number together and get some quotes and make sure it's doable, okay? I mean, I've been involved with Stonegate for 14 years now, and it's been a nightmare the whole time. And I want you to know I can get you a resume that shows that I built my first house in 1972. I've done many Form A lots. I've done 33 projects in Bristol County, Plymouth County, Nantucket County, and Barnstable. And I finished 33 of them. Stonegate's the only one I haven't ever done. And I can get you... What's that?
Can you mute, please?
Who's that? Stonegate's the only one I've had trouble with, you know? And it happened at a precarious time, you know? We had the Great Recession in 2008. You know, prices died. I mean, it's just been going on, okay? And if I could get an end game together, get everyone to agree how we're going to do it, get the prices, and set it up, then I have confidence it makes sense for me to do it based on what I got left and the potential for Phase B. But until I find out what the plan is, I can't do anything. I mean, I can run around and fix a pothole or a manhole or raise the cover, but it's just picking away at it, you know? And the best way is to do everything at once. Get one crew in there, have Tom look at the base, and then all the manholes, we can open them up to see if they're repaired. Then we can get someone to run a line through and then immediately just make the repair. And it will go much quicker and far less money.
Okay.
But I got to know what we're going to do. Like I say, that one way in and out, 6 years now.
I mean, that's a good place to start, because I know we had a checklist, quote unquote, of things for you to bring to this meeting. I don't want to say that's the easy one, but considering we do have that you've done your due diligence and reached out to them, I mean, I've confirmed with
Have you
Carrie
heard-
that we have not heard back yet from either the police chief or the fire chief. It's not like we have, per Richard, it's not like they were sent to this yesterday and they haven't had us to look at it. I mean, they
No, I got those all out before the last meeting.
you certainly did. And, so it's one of those things where, as frustrating I think as this is for you and for us, we cannot decide on that until we hear from them. It's one of those things where, well, they haven't said anything, so why don't we just do it? When we're talking safety, and I'm sure the residents are even more frustrated than we are about it. I mean, Greg, you have to agree, we cannot do anything until if they want to come forth and say no comment, fine. At least we have in record, they said no comment.
Right, and then we can make a decision.
But not hearing back from them is we can't take their lack of response as a response. So.
Give them a date of, please get back to us by.
But see, that, it's one of those things where, I thought about that. But then let's say they don't. Okay, does that mean, all right, then I guess we go forward? We can't do that.
And now, sir, the next meeting's the end of February.
Right, no,
So we lose another 2 months,
January.
I mean,
But no, I mean, he's right, and it's, we have reached out to them, and I know we have a new police chief, but Chief McGee is usually very good about responding to things. I'm surprised. I mean, nothing against him at all. I know you mentioned he's busy. I think Greg said he was on vacation recently, but if we can light another fire,
I'll reach out to them tomorrow.
if necessary, you can reach out to the town administrator to see if you can at least not for comment, but to push them along.
Well, I'll reach out to them first.
Oh no, I know, yeah, obviously, but I mean, like we can't say, well, if they don't comment by this date, then it's going to have to stay tabled until we hear from them. I mean, if this was something as simple as, do we put trees or not? But like when this is safety we're talking about, I will not do anything without hearing from them.
I'll let them know.
But like I said, I know Richard did reach out to them. We have letters of what he sent them. He CC'd us on everything. He certainly did do that. Greg, I would assume you're the point person for this project. I would assume you would agree that
do.
we cannot
Public
do
safety is number
anything.
one.
We cannot.
I can address some of the other things that he was mentioning too, but I do agree with you on the road entry off of County Street. until we hear from both police chief and fire chief. We should
Both,
make a
not what, right,
decision.
correct, both,
They
not
might
one or
just
the
say
other.
no comment, and at that point, then we can make a
Right,
decision.
if they
from
say
there.
no comment, then at least we have on record, they said no comment, and at that point, we go
Exactly.
forth what we decide to do, which will be difficult to do, but, I mean, at least we heard from them saying no comment. Even if they respond back saying, hey, I got it, I need to think about this, that's fine, at least we know that they got it and they were aware of it.
Yeah.
Kerry, do you have the, list of things that we asked for Richard to bring forth this meeting?
Zach, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, and this is for Richard, which is Richard, at the last meeting we had, going back, almost 2 months ago now, what we had talked about at that point was that you had committed to having the surface repaved before the winter set in. And you absolutely assured the zoning board that that could be done, that you had people on board who could do it, that you had contractors who could do it, and could get at least that part of the project done based on the engineering report that you have. Each time we've asked you to do this, and you've told us you can do it, you come back to us and you say, can we get Mr. Ferry down there? These are still private roads. These are not public ways. Mr. Ferry, unless I'm wrong,
No, Johnny, you're right.
expect these until they're finished. Then he can give them the town approval or not. But in the meantime, each time you promised us you're gonna do it, you come back and ask for Mr. Ferry. You say you'll work with the reports. Now we're in the winter and it can't be done, and now there's no choice but to potentially push this off to the spring. So maybe you've accomplished your goal, but that doesn't mean Mr. Ferry can do anything. You have an engineering report, you know what you need to do. And I feel like now, as you said, you have to decide whether to fish or cut bait. I feel like you're kind of stringing us along.
Marguerite, you would agree that Mr. Ferry cannot be involved, correct? I mean, I do understand from Richard's point of view, well, why not? It's going to be the town's road, potentially at some point, maybe, but because while it's a private road, he really can't get involved, correct?
So I do agree that Mr. Ferry doesn't have full authority over this. They would still need to have your engineers involved. Perhaps, you would have to talk to Mr. Ferry if he would be able to do any sort of on-site work with the engineers.
Because then if he's doing it with the engineers, it's technically through the town.
Then, if the town is looking to have this road ultimately accepted, and that
I would
is,
assume, but I
that is
can't
the
make that call.
possibility, then having Mr. Ferry's input is not a bad thing. It may possibly eliminate, some of the expenses. I think the concern I have here is that the conversation about Weston and Sampson's second, or updated, proposal, and the conversation about getting information to the fire chief and the police chief were first discussed back in my notes in our August meeting.
Yes.
The letter to the fire chief and the police chief went on November 15th, which is a Friday, so there's been the week before, it was the week before Thanksgiving that they had to review it. Last week was Thanksgiving. I think there is definitely, I understand that we don't have that letter yet, but I would be surprised if it wasn't there for the board's next
So
meeting.
there wasn't correspondence before the 15th, Carrie?
No, that's when it was, I have the letters here, it was sent on the
Then,
15th.
for the record, I do apologize. I thought, when I looked at the packet online today, I thought I saw it in October 15th and a November 15th, but I think I saw the November 15th twice, because one was for McGee and one was for Nichols.
Yeah.
So when I looked at it, I thought one was October and one was November. So that's my fault. I apologize to both Chief Nichols and Chief McGee. I was under the impression that they had received this a couple months ago, but that was not the case, so I apologize.
I think the concern that I have here, I hear your point, Richard, that this is expensive, to you, it's expensive to have the secondary proposal signed.
Right.
But this is the first time you're telling the board that. This proposal's been pending before you for a while, you've known the amount. If that's the concern, I would have preferred, and the understanding was that you would be reaching out to Weston and Sampson to be speaking to them about the proposal, and why was it needed, or did it need to happen in all of this, in this way? I know it's a new engineer that you're working with, but if we had not had a shift in engineers for the town, I don't think there ever would have been this conversation. This engineering company does things the way that they do it, they take money up front and they bill against it. The other engineering company simply just billed off of the 53G account. In the end, the cost is probably very comparable. if that is something you would rather work with them on, then that's something you should be proposing to them, because the proposal is to you.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that if Tom Ferry's a smart guy, he knows everybody roads, right? Why can't I have him come out and have him tell me how to fix the base?
So I don't know, first of all, if that's even something Tom Ferry would be interested in doing. That is
Well-
something the board would have to check with him on. But secondly, the town still needs a consulting. He doesn't have that expertise and authority.
He
to
would only have the authority if it was a public town road, and then he would have to, per his job description, but with a private road, he does not have to.
Well, Sampson did a nice job identifying all the issues, okay? So, like with the retention basins, I can cut it. I can get a solar engineer who's right up the street, come over here, shoot the grades, send him a plan, and certify that it meets the other plan, okay? Way simpler, way less expensive.
You can do that. And
That's
then
what I'm
Weston and
looking to
Sampson
do.
will review
Have
that.
them go into a review situation
Yep.
rather than be on site, okay? And have my guy, who's local, it's a 20-minute drive, come over, and typically he'd come over and would I'd like Tom involved, and if with your permission, I'll go talk to Tom, okay? And I also thought that maybe if we could have a meeting with the players, like with Tom Ferry, Jim Agria, the water department, the sewer department, about their different issues and concerns, and how I think we get a consensus how to move forward pretty quickly.
But, I mean, Marguerite, and then I guess Carrie as well, with the list we had, I think we made clear what we needed to go forward, correct? And not only that, I think Richard's saying that he's finding it, I don't want to say difficult, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's finding it easier to go through his civil engineering. Didn't at the beginning of this, he said he would just go with who we picked. No, not who we picked, who our town engineer was.
It was to save money, because we were gonna have it, and he would've had it someone else
Right,
too.
right.
So at that point, Rich, I understand where you're coming from, but there's a couple things here. You're asking for a town official to accept a non-road that we don't have.
Well, not accept, because that makes it sound like it's
Yeah,
being voted on, but I mean,
yeah,
he,
it's not accepted at this point. So right now, it's a private road, and I don't believe a town official is the man that we need to do the work
And-
that's at that project.
right, and to address what he said, with our permission, he wants to speak to Tom Ferry.
I don't-
He
I-
doesn't need our permission
No,
to talk to
yeah,
him,
absolutely.
but I mean, I can't say that, as a board, we can't say, Mr. Ferry, you must comply to Rich's request. I mean, if that would be up to him, and that's when it gets messy, is he doing it as a town official, and if he's doing it on a private road, that's when I would start to wonder,
So the zoning board could ask to have Mr. Ferry on site to observe.
okay,
They could ask to have Mr. Ferry's input into what might need to be done.
so input, but not the,
But in terms of doing the actual engineering work,
right,
then there's two options. You can either have the town's engineer be involved only, or you can go and have your own engineer work with you on that repair, and the town's engineer is going to come out and review it and approve the work that was done.
Well, I met with Tom, who was the prior engineering company back in the summer of '23? I can't remember, but Tom and I and Shaheen or something like that, okay? We went out there, we walked it, and Tom said, I think I want you to do this here, this here, you gotta do this. And he said, but, you don't have to rip it up, we can work with this. And I said, well, Tom, you and I are going to have a lot of things to do. And then, we got involved with Watson Sampson, and I get, whenever Tom has an issue and he sends me an email and I take care of it, he says, thank Richard. He's got a nice way about him.
hold on, John.
Mr. Fedorov,
John, hold on, let him finish.
Okay, and so I think I just take resources that are right here in town, and Harold Garcia, he's a good guy. Tom Ferry's a good guy. The water department, they have new people. The sewer department, Mr. Garcia, and I just deal with the guys who come out and look at my sewer connection, water's connection. They look at the manholes to make sure you're okay.
But at the end of the day, it's still gonna meet what Sampson says. It's
Oh,
still-
no, why?
Just
So
let me
what I
just-
can do
let me
is-
just finish.
I can
So
have,
you're asking us to have someone else come.
I'll have someone
That's
come
what
up
you're
and put
asking us.
everything
You're
on.
asking us to have someone else come and
What?
do the work,
Okay,
okay? But as long as they do what Sampson, our engineer, had stated. I have one question for Marguerite before we go crazy. So this comprehensive permit was signed back before the new rules of the pre-binder code and what's beneath it. It was in '04. So even though the comprehensive permit was accepted in 2004 for whatever this design that he has here, is he required to bring it up to code today because it was already installed prior and it was done in 2004?
So any changes that have been made at the local level?
Yeah.
He does not have to comply with. If
Okay.
they're state-based changes, then it's really gonna depend on the reason behind what's the board and the entity that's making that change. And
that's
generally,
where
he's
Tom-
grandfathered in.
That's what I-
However, even with the state changes, however, I don't wanna say that on a
Mm-hmm.
across-the-board basis. I would definitely be interested in seeing what those state codes are.
He's also on the hook here for sidewalks and trees.
Right, so that's under the comprehensive permit.
Right,
So
so
the
now-
only way that can change is through a modification request, which we've talked about several meetings.
Yes, we have.
And perhaps that may make sense. That was one of the things that Weston and Sampson included in its proposal, was to address whether or not it made sense for there to still be two sidewalks on both sides of the road. They needed to come out on site in order to provide that input. Tom Ferry is somebody who the board could also seek to get some input from. But this would all be through a modification request, which
It
we
is
all
gonna be a
agreed
modification, yeah.
made sense to do sort of in a more cohesive way after some of this other work had been done. You know, I think the concern that I don't disagree with you, Richard, it's been 20 months. I mean, I find the same concern. And I find that concern because I remember the first couple of meetings, we were talking about trying to have that playground
right.
used. And then
And
we've
I
had
worked
2
with-
summers where that playground hasn't
I
been
worked with
used.
Jonathan on that, and then all the neighbors said, we don't want it.
I'm not so sure that that's the case, because I never heard the neighbors say that. When they came in here, they all indicated they were interested in it. But I just haven't seen,
We
I
never
haven't
wanted
seen a
it,
lot of
but
work.
all the documents say they have to pay for it, and they don't pay a nickel.
Well, that's, again, a private matter that you
I
need to
know,
deal
I
with through a
know, but-
homeowners association
So
arrangement.
I worked with Jonathan, and we talked about how to make it, and I cleaned it up pretty good, and I was gonna put a ramp in, but then
Fair enough.
Nobody wanted
ask
to
you a
come.
question. Let me just ask you a question. This might simplify the entire process. Do you have an objection if we send a copy of the engineering report to Mr. Ferry, along with a simple cover letter that asks him to review the report and advise us as to whether he would recommend any differences or changes, and to respond prior to our next ZBA meeting, period?
John, I'm getting
He's either gonna say yes.
John, I'm getting a shaking head from Marguerite. Marguerite, can you address that?
So my only concern with that, Jonathan, is that I don't think it's a matter of whether there needs to be changes to what's being recommended. It's more about how, the proposal for Weston and Sampson is to bring someone on site or 2 people on site while the work is being done. So I don't think I'm hearing Richard object to necessarily the
What needs to be
work that
done.
needs to be done, just the way that he will go about doing that work.
So, Richard, let me ask you, are you objecting just to the 2 people on site only in that part of the cost? Or are you objecting to what they're saying with regard to the amount of resurfacing you need to do?
I can't understand a word.
Are you objecting to the proposed work that needs to be done? Or are you objecting to, I'm sorry, what was the other part of that?
To Sampson having people on site, or is it both?
Or are you objecting to having the 2 individuals there on site from Weston and Sampson?
Individual,
Having the 2 people from Weston and Sampson,
that's
There.
the foolishness,
That's the
I pay them
objection.
$2.40 an hour, travel time back and
That's
forth.
the issue.
2 of them, that's.
So just to be clear, you're not disputing the work that needs to be done?
Oh, no, not at
Okay.
all. But if I could work with Tom, he identifies it, he'd come over and watch me cut it out, and then he'd come back to look at the mix, and then Silver will come out and do a plan.
Okay, so.
I have to have Silver lay out the whole roadway, but I have to know whether we're gonna do a sidewalk or not. But, you know,
So you have the right to use Silva right now, on your own. You
Yeah.
don't need the board's permission to do
I-
that, you can
okay.
do that, and then we would have Weston and Sampson review the work that was done.
Right.
That's it.
and he could do a plan and set it up to Weston and Sampson. Okay, I don't.
Yes.
You know, we're not putting a sewer line in 8 feet in the ground. We're taking 2 inches of asphalt on, compacting the base and putting more asphalt on top of it. It's not a big deal.
That you have that ability to do that
Okay, then I,
on your own. You just had, up until today, not indicated you wanted to have your own engineer do this work.
yeah, in Weston and Sampson, and honest, we had pretty much a 2-foot base, and they recommend 1.5 inch top. So if I could do all the repairs work, and I lay out the layout, and we can decide whether we want a sidewalk or not, or just the berms, it goes very much, you know, I mean, it's way different when you have a guy down the street, or a guy over in Middleborough, who will just shoot over here, spend an hour, and then they'll leave, and before we put any pavement down, they come back, they check the pavement, the mix, and then we put it down. But yeah, we'll still have that oversight. I'm not looking to run wild on you.
Yep.
So.
And I bet I could get this young fella to help me too.
Okay, so
No,
let's.
no, he
now-
seems very smart, you
So,
know?
what
I
do
used to
we-
be just like you 40 years ago.
What do we have next on the list of things that Richard was supposed to address? So obviously, pun intended, no pun intended, we're going to table the discussion. I mean, there was correspondence with the resident back and forth regarding potholes. This resident happened to mention his feelings about the gate, but other than that, we haven't really heard anything about the gate. So we're going to table that discussion for now. What else was on the list? There's like 4 things, but. So if you want to just do literally one at a time, unless we've already addressed it.
Yeah, I just lost it, hold on, I just had it.
And I'll do the legwork with Tom and the other department heads. Maybe I can just get them come till we all talk about it together one night.
Carrie, I had it, and you have it? Okay.
So the first item was contacting the chiefs about the gate.
So skip that, not skip that one, but that one's been decided, we're moving on for that one for at the time being, okay.
Submit information to the
Hey,
board regarding
that's
nine.
Richard. Submit,
Information to the board regarding 939 Stonegate Landing.
all right, let's do that one. Carrie, unless I missed it, I don't see anything in our packet specific to that. Did he give you?
There is, at the end.
Yeah, it's at the
Okay, oh, okay.
It was sent on Friday.
Yeah, so you'll see a letter like this
Oh, okay,
at the very end.
okay. So this was dated,
What are we looking at?
November 29th. This is to our
Good.
town administrator regarding illegal access frontage permits, 939 Stowgate Landing, Dayton, Mass. Attached are a copy of the letter with attachments dated December 3rd, 2018 to Karen Brady, then Administrative Assistant Board of Selectmen, Exhibits A through G, Exhibits H through P. Letter dated November 15th, 2024 to Police Chief Greg Nichols and Fire Chief, George Nichols and Fire Chief Christopher McGee. The issues addressed in the letter to Karen Brady have never been resolved. At the time, I did request a public meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss a resolution for the benefit of both the town and Stowgate Landing LLC. I received no response from the board. The board did hold a meeting in executive session to discuss my concerns. After that meeting, I received no response. I was told that the only response on the record was quote, potential litigation, unquote. The entire matter was just swept under the rug. Stonegate Landing was initially approved by a comprehensive permit 40B issued on February 19th, 2004, 20 years ago. It's been a very rough road. I first became involved in the project of 2010. The second letter to Chief Nichols and Chief McGee deals with the same illegal access / frontage / permits issues raised in my December 3rd, 2018 letter to Karen Brady. For the past 18 months, I have been working with the I've been working with the Zoning Board of Appeals on how to best fix Stonegate for the benefit of the homeowners of the town and Stonegate Landing LLC. It has been an overwhelming task. I believe it will only be accomplished with the Board of Selectmen bringing all affected boards, departments, homeowners, and myself together for a reasonable solution that benefits all. Thank you for your consideration at this matter. Best regards, Richard Federoff. And then we have just an email from Richard to Carrie regarding the attachments of things that were submitted.
No, actually, that email's for a separate issue.
Oh, sorry, okay.
That email has to do with plans that Richard needed to provide.
Oh,
to
right,
us.
okay. So,
Richard, I'm not sure I ever received, got a copy of this letter by email on November 29th. You indicated you were gonna send the exhibits separately by email, and I never got that.
I have a whole set if you want to take patients.
I'm sure.
Okay.
But did you send that by email to everybody?
I did, and Carrie, you acknowledged you received them, remember? I checked with you a couple times.
When was that? When was that?
It was...
You're talking about the exhibits from a letter that you did on November 29th.
Yes.
Okay, so you couldn't have sent me a couple times if you mailed
I
this
mean,
on the
go back,
29th?
yeah, I attached them. I mean, I have paper copies. I mean, I had to sell it in three emails because it was a big file, and I thought I screwed it up once, and then I worried, and I sent it again. Then I checked with you to see if you got them, and you told me you did. I can tell you approximately.
So one of three, but this was, Marguerite is talking about a letter that you sent to the town administrator
Right.
on November 29th.
Oh, yeah. And,
Those are the exhibits that she's talking
oh,
about.
I didn't send you those attachments.
Right, those are the ones we're looking
Because
for.
they're the same attachments I sent you before.
Oh,
Okay,
Okay.
they're exactly the same. What I did, I sent you a letter I sent to Karen Brady, and I had those attachments. They would have been the very same attachments that I'm talking about that
Okay.
came with the other one.
So yes, I did receive those back in October, but it wasn't as part of this package for what you sent,
No, because
because that wasn't clear.
no, I sent the attachments to Mr. What's his
The
name?
town administrator,
Yeah,
yes.
he has the attachments, but I just,
Okay.
it's a big file, and so I made sure I sent 3 emails to him, so he got the cover letters and that, and then I should have noted to you that I only sent you the letter, the new stuff, so what, I put a cover letter on the letter that was 2018 to Karen Brady with all the attachments, but they were all the same attachments.
So I guess that means, Marguerite, item 2 of this list for Richard, we really can't discuss this until
Well-
you have a chance to look over everything?
I looked it over back in October, when it was sent briefly.
Okay.
And, it appears, I think there's 2 different things happening with this roadway. You have the issue of a one-way entrance.
Right.
Which is part of the comprehensive permit and the way the road was constructed.
Right.
And it has, certain turning radiuses that were constructed, et cetera, and it's being used as a 2-way road. Then you have the problem with this 939 Somerset Avenue, which is using the one-way entrance as its driveway.
Right, and it
In
should have been
essence.
off of Somerset
Right.
Avenue, but then the town allowed Joe Lawrence to issue permit based on the frontage being Stonegate Landing, and they had no right to it.
Okay,
But yet they put the house in, put the
They
entrance in,
also had-
connected the water, connected the sewer.
Yep.
And then when the water blew up into that person, I had to go fix it.
okay. They also had, at one point in time, proposed a plan with the driveway coming off of Route 138.
Right.
And so that plan had also been approved at one point in time.
Right.
They said there was an easement of some sort that was granted by Stonegate Landing.
They made that up.
Okay, well, that's
Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Tardanico was at the last meeting and said he granted that to them.
yes.
Well, there was something, it's a,
Okay, so, but I saw documents
we all
about that.
know
Yeah,
that a
there's-
right to use has to be recorded at the registry of deeds.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be recorded per se, but it can still exist and not be recorded. And then it exists between the two parties.
Right.
It's not necessarily able to be acted on if it's not recorded correctly. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and it appeared through the town records that it did exist at one point in time. I think the reason, from what I saw in the paperwork that you sent to me, you had indicated you thought there was something done inappropriately and there may be potential litigation that you were pursuing. I think there may also be some possible action you need to take with this homeowner. You talked at one point in time about adverse possession, which is something you probably want to be thinking about because this has now been used for a number of years since this house went in. That is something that's a private issue between you and the homeowner. This homeowner currently has a driveway. It's a one-way driveway in. It would technically be the one, continue on to go out. I mean, he still has to abide by the one-way aspect of that road. Nothing changes.
Actually, they have no right to that road.
Well, they may not have any right to that road, and that's
I
something,
could block them off.
that's something you could talk to them about and go and deal with them on in a private way about. But this town, I don't believe this town, the information this town was given was that there was an access easement granted by the then owners of Stonegate Landing. And there's a possibility that this homeowner may actually have a copy of that access easement.
They don't.
Well, I don't know if they do or do not.
The house was built and sold to them, okay, with no right to use that road.
Well, the plan that was approved by the town indicated that there was an access easement that was granted to them. So that it didn't just ignore.
Okay, Chad had
Yes.
a deal when they were doing that, to let them come in with materials. They just took it to the nth degree, okay? And
But
I
that's
have-
not, so I guess this is where I was confused with what you had sent to me in October, and I wasn't here for the October meeting, so then I saw it again in November, and I wasn't sure if these were the same exhibits, and they are apparently. This is not a town issue, the town can't come in and fix this for you. If you don't believe these people have the authority to use that roadway, you need to go and talk to them and tell them that. All the town can do is enforce that when they use that roadway, that they are using it in accordance with the one-way aspect of the road. The same as they can require of every other homeowner in Stonegate Landing.
When I wrote this letter in 2018, okay, I went and saw Jim Agria, and he told me, you're right, that permit should never have been issued, right there in Town Hall.
I think we need to table, we need to move on from this, so we've established that
Problem
it's
is,
a
I don't think
private.
we're gonna get any further, other than.
But we can't really sit here and listen, if it's gonna be a private matter, I mean,
Yeah, I will pursue that, okay, but
Okay, then what's
everybody will
number
think
3 on
it's
the list, Karen?
draconian if I block them.
Well, then I would probably encourage that you have a conversation with them before you take action like that.
Well, okay, but the only reason I didn't is that
Richard, we have to move on.
permit, if the permit's issued
Richard,
for 10 years,
Richard,
I'm sorry.
this
someone
is a
talking.
private, this is gonna have to be a private matter between you and that
Okay,
resident. We as a
I'll
board
pursue
cannot keep
that.
hearing about this.
But it just, but you'll say,
That's number 3.
okay, on that vein, what I would like to ask you, if we decide to make it one way in and put a gate up, that I put the gate after the entrance to their
We're
driveway.
not even talking about the gate right now. We've already
Oh.
established we're not talking about the
Okay.
gate right now.
Okay,
We can't say if we're doing it, because as of right now, we might not get a gate, so we can't even go, we can talk about that when we get there certainly, but we're not there yet.
but I think I would have to get permission just to give them the right to use that from the board.
Carrie, what's number 3 on the list?
Number 3 is perform the stormwater system maintenance, cleaning all the catch basins, storm drains, inspect the outflows, confirm there's no blockage, and perform a power flow on the back corner of Eagle Terrace and a one-way entrance area on Stonegate Landing.
Okay, Which one? I'm sorry.
Has that been done yet?
I gotta catch up.
So over on Eagle
sorry.
Terrace, it wasn't even installed.
So,
correctly.
It was, what?
Wasn't installed correctly right out of the rip. Remember we heard about there was a playground sitting on a detent pond? It's because the drainage was never brought to the detent pond. The drainage was rerouted in through lot 31A and went out through the back, and it's now just feeding into the wetland in the back over there.
Has it been addressed that you know?
So Sampson had brought that up on their report. It is functioning, but it's not functioning to the detail that the comprehensive permit had designed. So that section there, it is functioning. I do remember reading that they did camera, they did power flow. The areas, they are working. The only thing when we were talking about detent ponds on Eagle Terrace that I can remember listening in the report was that was not right here, you can see it right here, there's the line it's supposed to have been. It's actually going into here, and this goes into a back of the detent pond. They literally have a playground on top of the detent pond, because it's not functionality, so it was never hooked up.
Which is obviously, that's before Richard stepped in.
Of
this
course.
is years ago, yeah.
No, this is prior to him taking on the project, but,
So, I guess,
it is functioning.
is there anything that can be done from the board's point, from the board, with the way that the board has an input on?
After reading the report from Sampson, it is functioning. That is not working at all. The other option would be is abandon what was done and run it through the person's yard and hook it up back up to the detent pond that was designed for. The flow was adequate. There was a 2% flow going out of through the drains going out, so it was adequate. But that, so you're talking about detent ponds and stuff, I just wanted to bring that one up.
yeah.
That's the only one I really was listening for. I'm not sure about the other
How,
ones.
you said stormwater basins and what else?
Catch
And
basins.
the catch basin, storm
And
drains.
the catch basins needed to be raised, the structures, correct, because right now they're tarred over. So,
yeah.
but that's all in Sampson's report. So now, the way I look at it is he does have a design and a report that was done by an engineer that the town uses. As long as he performs the work that's going to be required based on the engineering.
And that was not done.
And right
And
now.
was that something that we asked to be done for this meeting, or just an update for
We
it?
would,
Right.
there was discussion about having it
Because
brought up.
some things were just an update on, some things were to be done by. That's why I just want to make sure that we have.
I thought Mr. Federoff had stated that he was gonna start working on raising some of the storm drains. That's what I remember in the last meeting, he was gonna start bringing them up to an elevation so they could be tarred. So there was something in Sampson's report saying that they don't recommend we go over the binder, they recommend a full removal and put back in. That's based on standards of today.
And that he has to abide by.
Yeah, well, not necessarily, because he's got a comprehensive permit that
From
was
this-
signed
from the
prior
form.
to 2007.
But then unless it's the state one, then it.
Yeah.
It may.
So
It may.
that being said, when it comes to Mr. Ferry, I mean, he could say, I'm okay with it. I mean, but again, it's a suggestion. It's not saying it needed to be. It's a suggestion. Their suggestion was a full removal
Okay.
due to, doesn't meet the standards of today's state road.
Okay. And
So,
what was number 4 on the list? Was that 4
So
or 5?
Did
Right,
you?
so this, Richard had indicated that this was discussed at length in, September. And all of this particular work, it was kind of specified what could be done immediately. This was sort of some quick action that you could take to show that you were doing something around the
Right.
project. And-
And the number one thing is Lisa Paquette, when Jeff was here, he's been doing a project in Hanson, and he had told at the last meeting that he thought he could get it done by Thanksgiving, and that work's going to be done this Thursday and Friday. He's just been tied up where he was,
Okay.
Okay.
including Lisa.
Okay.
But that was, the Lisa email about Thanksgiving had to do with,
Right. That wasn't
The
really.
trees.
Jeff's idea was to come and
there
do
was the
everything at
water
once.
issue, right?
yeah, that was the property
Right.
that had
That,
the
that, that was
swale.
the flooding in the back. That wasn't. I'm not saying that all couldn't be addressed that at once on the field when it came to doing the work, but it was two different issues. It was, I'm not saying that's not an issue, it is, but this was specifically related to the work that he said could be done.
Right. So Lisa had submitted a letter to the board in its September meeting, which I'm just not putting my fingers on right now. And this is September. This is today's, sorry. And that had to do with, some flooding and planting of, everything up to the planting of trees. That Jeff had indicated he would try to get done before Thanksgiving, and if you're saying that work's being done this Thursday and Friday, then we'll make a note about that. But that's different than what.
We let Lisa know, okay, and it is gonna be done Thursday or Friday this week.
Okay, then now what about?
And Lisa did some work on her own.
Okay, now what about do we have a specific list of certain things, or just is this a general of the stormwater basins?
So that was different, that was not.
No, I know.
The stormwater basin. The stormwater basin conversation happened later in the meeting, and, Greg, you repeated the things that you were saying at that time. We understood that there was a lot of work that was going to need to be done with the basins in the springtime, but this was some work that was talked about as being able to be done before the ground froze. Just some initial quick cleanup work, and perhaps Jeff is planning on doing that as well right now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The, one of the basins is on not Pilot Rock, the other, and it's accessible. Watson Sampson said it appears to have been done the way it was. It just hasn't been cut and cleaned for a while, and that was off the road, as was the thing down at Eagle Terrace. Yeah, and both of them are functioning fine, okay? They're working, okay? And I guess when Lisa said, well, let's do something, but it is just far better if I know exactly everything we're gonna do, because if I go down and fix those and then we get a price,
I think it's best that you tell us what you're not gonna do, because
What's that?
tell us what you're not gonna do.
Okay.
Tell us what you're not gonna do. How about that? Let's start with that.
What are we doing?
Not that, no. You're saying it's best that we have all the boards get together. You get a list of what you don't want to do, and then we can probably talk about it, because we're going back and forth.
I'll give you what my idea would be.
Yeah, and then, not that we're gonna accept it by any means, but at least now we know what you're not planning on doing.
I agree, but wait, was there anything else on that list?
Yes,
You're right,
so there
that's what I
was, excuse me, provide a copy of the 2009 as-built plan, which he did.
Yep.
And any other plans. Follow up with Weston and Sampson to confirm if they are recommending that the existing binder coat be fully removed and replaced, or if it only needs to be replaced in areas where the asphalt is distressed.
That's what we talked out, that's what I brought
You
up.
were supposed to reach out to Weston and Sampson
Right.
to find out about the binder.
Well, I just read the reports, okay? They have the reports. In the reports, they say that it meets the specs when it was put in. It doesn't meet today's specs, and as far as, but I shouldn't put any top on it until I repaired the base. So then I said, maybe I go see Tom Ferry, tell him what to do the base, we put the one that has cop on, and we're done. You know, I mean, if they were come back to you and said, well, they're going to say something to the effect of, it doesn't meet today's specs, so we can't recommend it, but...
It was their recommendation, that's all.
That's,
That doesn't mean that, I
Okay.
think Marguerite and I are kind of on the same idea. I feel that you are locked in on the date of the install.
Unless
Okay.
it's a state one, and that's
Well, yeah, now this is not gonna be a state road.
Okay.
Okay, it's gonna be a public
a
road.
state mandate, but
Yes.
yeah, but the road.
So I don't think he's grandfathered on stormwater, though.
Well,
How's that work?
he's grandfathered on the local stormwater.
Design that was original.
Right, because that had to meet the state stormwater requirements. To the extent that your stormwater bylaw, which came into effect after this was permitted, has more requirements than what the state required, then doesn't even need to seek a waiver at this stage.
Right, 'cause he's
He's
under
grandfathered in. Well, otherwise he would have needed to seek a waiver because but he doesn't even need to seek a waiver because he's grandfathered in. He's held to the 2004 requirements for stormwater.
Yeah. So what I read on the report is that the binder coat was supposed to be 1.5 inches, some areas were 3.
Good.
And that's based on how the topography of the land, when they graded it, the machine will grow, it'll go 3, 2, 1, back up to 3 again. Keeps it equal. The storm drains, stormwater drains are recessed under the binder. So, let me finish. And you had said in our last meeting, that I'm gonna start doing some of that work now. Okay, bringing them up to the coat. Concern I have is you're gonna have a private contractor plowing. You're gonna have a raised structure now. I don't think this is the time to do that. It's kinda late in the game on that one.
Greg, I honestly thought that we were gonna handle the 2 basins, and because you had to bring them up.
Yeah.
And if you bring it up to current grade, then it's gonna have to be raised again. And some places we have a little problem with the,
Yeah, yeah.
So, they're under the ground. The best thing to do is to know exactly what we do in the pavement, and then bring them up to the
Okay.
height that it needs to be.
Right, but you had stated you were gonna address a couple of the storm basins in the road and raise them prior.
And that's what I'm doing Thursday and Friday.
You're gonna raise them now?
What's that?
You're gonna raise storm basins now?
No, I'm not gonna really do nothing in the road.
Okay, that's all I care
Nothing
about.
in the road.
Whatever you're doing on the other
That's all,
house, that's
yeah,
something.
nothing in the road.
All right, so we're not gonna do any raising of any storm basins within the road until spring now, right?
Was that it on the list?
So,
Okay.
that's pretty much all I had with the road work on that. And then, like I say, I really think it's best, after going through this back and forth, you've got the report that the town engineer, and you had agreed to have the engineer come out, he gave you the report. It's up to you how you wanna handle that report. However, if the town is going to accept your road, we're gonna fall back on Sampson's report.
I
I
understand.
just want you to know that.
But
2 of the quick things. 1, 53G, we had requested,
A replenishment.
do you
You're
have
supposed
that
to
yet?
bring a replenishment for the 53G?
You know, I was away most of last week, and I just got your email, and you were gonna tell me where the balance is. And
Yeah.
so I just wanna sit with you and with the idea where we're not gonna use Sampson, we're gonna use Watson and Sampson to review, not to do out here.
Mm-hmm.
So that might change what you need too. So I wanted,
Well, no, that original deposit that you gave me was for the quote that they gave you the report.
okay.
that was the
Right.
7,500, right?
That was, yes.
Back in September.
I need a replenishment because I have some additional, like, legal bills that need to be signed, to be
Okay,
paid.
can I
So
come see them on? Okay.
I can send it to you.
Well, that'd be, yeah.
Yeah.
If you could, I just wanted this, so I want to talk to you about my feelings of Watson Sampson, if that affected it.
That has nothing to do
That
with
has
me.
nothing to
You
do
have to
with-
address
Just
that with the
this
board.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know we were putting more in because of Watson Sampson.
No,
Oh, no?
that was a separate proposal.
Separate. That was separate.
Okay. I gotta do it. Okay.
The last thing,
Whatever I told you I'd do it, I'd do it.
the last thing for this is the matter with the potholes that we have some correspondence on. The last I have was, Tom, forgive me, Kerniski, if that's how you pronounce your last name, forgive me. The most recent thing I have is dated November 8th. There's plenty
That
more.
it was fixed, right?
That was plenty. There's plenty more correspondence before that. Do you feel it's best I read all these into the minute? They're in the packet, but all these emails, should I read them into the minutes now, or is it more just for us to address?
I don't think you need to read them, but you can indicate, maybe read letters that were sort of just note that the following documents were received relating to a pothole repair that appears to have been fully addressed.
Okay.
And then I would just say, for instance, like an email from Tom Karinsky, to Richard Federoff dated Friday, November 8th, 2024.
I
subject pothole
believe
stone
they
gate
start
maintenance.
the 7th,
But,
correct?
yeah, you could just kind of summarize that, Zach, without having to read every detail of it.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
appears this was resolved.
Yes, it's actually within these emails that the resident, it's within the emails, these emails I referred to before about the resident mentioning about his feelings on the gate, but I'm just stating that for the record, but, so I'll start off with the first one. So it was sent, from Tom Krasinski to Tom Ferry regarding the pothole on Stonegate Landing that has led to some accidents and damage to his vehicles, and this has been all caught up through November 14th, I believe is the most recent one that I saw, and this is all has been fixed. We have pictures of everything. Richard has sent an email to Tom Ferry saying that the pothole was done. We have pictures of the work being patched up, which you guys have all in your packet. It's the one that you can kind of see the picture of Town Hall kind of off in the background there. So that has been patched up. Is there anything else, board members, that we have? And then
We haven't got anywhere with the curb cut, right? That's not happening. We haven't heard anything about that, because that's gonna,
Was there something going on Friday, November 9th, or at Town Hall? They had to reroute traffic around,
oh, I don't know.
I don't know, anyway.
So the curb cut, we haven't heard anything about that, right?
the curb cut? No.
Veterans Day Parade, 'cause that's was in his email.
Yeah. I don't think so, right, Carrie? Nothing on the curb cut.
I haven't received anything.
Greg, do you have anything else?
Nope.
Sue, do you have anything? Dave? Elise? John, anything else?
I'm good.
Are there any residents of Stonegate that have anything they would like to say, or if you're just on for information, that's of course fine. If there's anything you do want to say, please unmute and just state your name and address for the record if you don't mind. Because we're on Zoom, I'll give it a few seconds, and if I don't hear anything, we'll move on. Okay, so we will move on. Marguerite, anything closing before we can move on to the next item agenda?
Well, I guess I'll just indicate that I still think there's some substantial to-do items. Richard, perhaps if Jeff is going out this weekend, the end of this week, then some of the work, yes, that would be very helpful, so we know what work was done. It would be very helpful if you showed Jeff the email that Carrie has been sending you with the list of items to be done, to make sure that he not only addresses Lisa's issues, but also some of the work around the catch basins and the Eagle Terrace. That's all listed out for you in that email, so if you could give that to Jeff to do, that would be very helpful. Hopefully, we'll have an answer from the fire chief and the police chief by the next meeting, so we can keep talking about the one-way entrance. It is between you and the 939 Somerset Avenue homeowner, how you want to handle that access issue. I don't think this is a town issue. If you believe it is, then you need to hire a lawyer and you need to pursue that on your own with the town. But I can't, this board can't get involved in that, okay? And then, the last thing that I have here, is that if you don't want to work with Weston and Sampson the way it was proposed, you can go and use your own engineer, you can do the work, and the town will have Weston and Sampson review it. That is up to you, you can do that right now, you don't need the board's permission.
But the lesson with what's, they really did a great job identifying everything.
Right,
Okay.
so we have that report, and now you can choose to do the
We can
work
use that to go
through
ahead.
your own contractors, and then
Yeah.
the town will have Weston and Sampson review it, the work, once it's completed, and that will be handled separately,
Okay.
okay? But I agree that there's not a lot of work that can be done on this road now, but there is a lot of work, legwork that should be done before the spring starts to get quotes, to get these plans in place so that this can actually happen this spring and we don't go through another 12 months with none of it happening.
I might die.
Well,
You know,
let's hope not.
I'm 75, I could drop in 7.
We don't want that.
Really?
All right,
Right? I could, poof, go.
move on to our,
If I fall, someone has to give me, mouth to mouth.
all right, we're moving on to our next item agenda, which is 4-2 Bruce LLC / Bruce Development Corp.
Tom Ferry shared
We're calling someone up, sorry, Richard.
Arborcrest.
Tom
Fremont.
Ferry told me,
Okay,
Richard, this project
okay, we still have you being sorry, Richard.
will make you laugh.
Fremont Street. Map 4. Lots 55, 4, 55, and 57. Status update of the project. Sorry for the wait to
Good
get here.
evening, members of the board. Joshua Glass here regarding the Arborcrest Estates project. We were asked to provide a status update, and with your permission, Mr. Chair,
Sure,
I can jump right into that.
go for it.
So, a little bit of background, just because it's been some time since we last spoke. This is a 40B project along Tremont Street, 84 lots, 26 of which are affordable. 21 lots are accessed off of School Street. We're not doing anything there right now. The balance of the lots are accessed either as Form A lots off of Tremont Street or from the boulevard entrance off of Tremont Street that you may have seen if you've driven by was recently cleared. The overall parcel is 113 acres, approximately 75% is open space, and the actual construction of the houses and lots themselves is a 4 or 3.5 phase project, which is different than what Natural Heritage created in terms of what we call Heritage Phase 1 and Heritage Phase 2, which I'll get to towards the end, but 2 different phasing sequences, which we discussed last time. So again, originally approved in 2003, it includes 92 conditions. I said to you previously, I'll say it again, we will be back in front of you regarding some number of those conditions. We realize that we'll be back in front of you with a definitive plan set as well. So that is coming. Background on this, there was extensive litigation with an abutter. I believe the successors and title are here this evening with their attorney. That had numerous trips to the Housing Appeals Committee and the Appeals Court, as well as attempts to go to the Supreme Judicial Court. That was finally resolved. We came back to this board, received an extension, which was granted, thank you, or requested and received an extension, which was granted and thank you. We then expended an enormous amount of time and resources to update the engineering plans. We have drafted a compiled set. We discussed it with you last time we were in front of you. A draft of it was shared with both the sewer and the water with the sewer, North Dayton Fire District and the Sewer Commission as part of the applications that were submitted to them, but they have not been submitted to you. One of the reasons they went in, if you recall, to those particular utility providers is as we start to go through the due diligence we need to do and some of the analysis we need to do, we need to be able to identify easement areas and the access points and the final designs. So that final definitive compiled plan set will come to you, obviously before the next material step happens, which would basically say requesting a building permit. But there's a number of steps under the existing permit that will remain in place that will take place. So, background. Last time we were in front of you, we were coming in front of you to do one specific portion of this project, which was really essentially the Wetland Crossing and Construction access, which included clearing 4 lots 37, 38, 57, and 58. We were delayed a few weeks at the time, but I think all worked very collaboratively with the building official and this board, and had a pre-construction meeting, did a site walk with the zoning officer, engineer, and an abutter. 2 items were specifically raised, one regarding an access chain. If you go out there and drive by, you'll see that that's in place along with some cones and signs and visual discouragements from people entering the property. And then a vegetative buffer with the neighbor, who's not here this evening, but with a little too much information, he also pulled out the buffer on the other side of his house, so he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. So we've been in pretty regular communication. We're going to work with him on that. We've been talking about it, but he's trying to figure out exactly what he would like and then what we think makes sense on our side. But we've generally stayed in pretty good contact and touch regarding the project. Yep. That piece of the project, we were primarily proceeding under the approved superseding order of conditions from DEP, as you may recall, which was a peer-reviewed and approved plan We weren't pulling building permits, and we're not pulling them right now, obviously. So we've completed the work that we came before you and discussed, I think it was in August of 2023. You may have all seen it. I'm happy to give a quick verbal summary just so you know. Essentially, we cleared portions of lot 57 and 58, which are the two lots that are easterly of the boulevard entrance along Tremont Street, the Form A lots. We cleared the access and wetland crossing in portions of lot 38 and 37. The zoning officer and the highway superintendent actually came out a couple times for inspections, took some photos, spoke with the contractor, various iterations throughout the process to conduct those inspections and provide those, visuals. Generally kept Mr. Aguirre abreast of any developments, nothing major or significant. But right now, again, if you walked out there, you'd see approximately 450 feet of cleared, unfinished road. You'd pass through the breakaway chain, cones to discourage trespassers, the turtle gate that is in place under the Natural Heritage approval. The entire area is enclosed by a silt fence, which in some places serves for erosion control, but in all places serves as a turtle barrier. That silt fence is occasionally supplemented by filter sock in various locations as required. All disturbed areas have been seeded and stabilized. Erosion and sediment control stabilization measures are all in place. The immediate access point has a stone stabilized pad made of large and small gravel to prevent sediment from flowing as well from sheet flow as well as from traffic. To the immediate right, to the immediate easterly of the boulevard entrance, you'll see what I think there was some confusion by maybe a couple of the neighbors. They thought it was a detention basin. That is actually a pocket wetland. So if you've driven by and you've thought to yourself, why is there water in there? It's because there's supposed to be. That's a pocket wetland, not a detention basin. The hydrodynamic separator was installed, but it's offline. It won't go online until the whole system is activated. There's a temporary sediment trap that you'll see. That's installed and online until the permanent system is in place. That's regularly inspected to ensure no sediment or buildup or evidence of erosion is taking place. The roadway itself was taken down to the actual subbase, native soils removed, processed gravel brought in. It's still going to require 12 inches of gravel and the 3.5 to 4 inches of asphalt. It was all compacted and tested. It all was above the 95% compaction standard requirement. Following that along up to the actual crossing, the first wetland replication area is located to your right. It's approximately 650 square feet. All of the wetland replication areas, of which there are 3, were taken down to a proper base grade to confirm a hydrological connection with the existing wetland. That area was confirmed, the hydrological connection based upon grade was confirmed by a wetland biologist, LEC Environmental. Then Outback Engineering came out and surveyed both the base grade in the area to confirm base grade and square footage requirements for the replication areas. Then the actual replication work itself began. And then in September of this year, so recently, the actual plantings took place. We have to continually monitor that for 2 growing seasons. That required, since planting, because of the lack of water, we had to go out there and regularly water. But LEC has gone out and done their inspections, and actually I just gave Carrie copies. They provided, so technically this piece of the project is covered by DEP and Natural Heritage, both of whom, under their separate permits, required what I'll call progress reports. Or Natural Heritage actually requested a completion report, but we provided an interim report because Heritage Phase 1 won't technically be complete until the wetland replication 2-year stabilization and progress report is complete. But the majority of the work has been completed, so we wanted to give them an interim report. One piece on the DEP side of things and the progress report that they received, during the course of this project, we got into a discussion with DEP about whether or not they felt a water quality certificate might be required. We did not. Mr. Aguirre was made aware of this. Lisa Caledonia, the health agent, was made aware of it. We ended up going through the process with DEP under reservation of rights. They issued a water quality certificate, no changes to the project. They approved it as is. They raised one question regarding some grading and stabilization on the backside of one replication area very discreet, but the project is unchanged. So going forward, LEC will continue to serve as the inspecting entity with respect to the wetland replication areas. They'll, provide the necessary percentage analysis, 75% established, blah, 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 and provide those annual reports. The box culvert itself has been installed. It's approximately 3x4 culvert, open on each side. The bottom is layered with native material. That was per the requirements of DEP. Fairly large retaining wall, but if you turn to the right, once you've passed it, you'll see the another wetland replication area to the east. It's approximately 3,500 square feet. You'll also see a temporary sediment trap in front of the native stockpiled materials. These stockpiled materials are encircled in a silt fence, and we're all seeded for the winter. The cleared area between the stockpile and the wetland replication area is all seeded. That's all in place and has grown properly, and the sediment trap temporary nature is there and has been inspected and will continue to be inspected to ensure there's no evidence of buildup or evidence of erosion. Final material item is to the west of the culvert is the other replication area, approximately 3,560 square feet. Those three areas constitute the required replication areas from DEP. Current status is we're monitoring up through the site, the plants going dormant, which was in mid-November, which is why the reports went in when they did. We'll continue monitoring and independently inspecting for erosion following, regularly, as well as following major rain events, snow melt, things like that, to make sure that there's no sediment or runoff. And the fencing and the turtle gate on the main site will remain in place. And you'll notice on the two Form A lots further down Tremont, east of the boulevard entrance, that is not going to, we're going to keep the stakes in place and the fencing in place generally, so it doesn't need to be resurveyed, but that silt fence is not going to be actively monitored and maintained as a turtle barrier because we're not doing active work there right now. It'll just be easier to reinstall the turtle barrier when the time comes to do work there. But the turtle barrier will remain in place on the main site. So next step, we'll obviously be back in front of you with a definitive plan set before we can ask for a building permit. There will be many steps between now and then. A number of the conditions will need to be discussed. They'll be impacted by utility design and peer review, mass housing, and then just practical matters like even pricing if you've looked at the permit recently. Excuse me. For now, you may recall one of the reasons, the primary reason we did this is because we needed the construction access. We can't come down Chase Street. That's only for utilities. Right. So now we're able to get in, do test pits, design work, evaluate water tables for lot and house design. People can safely park. They can enter and depart the site. You now have the erosion controls in place to do that. You've got the stone stabilized entrance. You're not parking on the side of Tremont Street trying to move rigs on and off there. One of the bigger pieces, and I'm only mentioning it because Carrie specifically emailed about it, natural heritage. So where natural heritage stands, this was all done under what we call Heritage Phase 1, which allowed us to do this work and had a number of conditions associated with it. Those three well, let me back up a second. Remember, this relates to the eastern box turtle, which is a species of special concern. We received approval in October of 2022. The approval has three conditions, primary conditions, and essentially it's put up and maintain the fencing, which we've done and will continue to do. Implement the approved plan itself, which again isn't a drawn out plan it's an actual steps to follow during construction, which we've done and will continue to do. And then a compliance report within 30 days of completion of the work. Technically, again, that work isn't completed until all of the replication areas have completed their 2-year growing period. So that's why Natural Heritage received an interim report rather than a final report, because the Phase 1 work is technically still open. The Phase 2 work, which is essentially the rest of the project, will require us going and meeting with the Conservation Commission over a possible conservation restriction. Heritage has given what I would call a preliminary scope concept approval, but we're going to have to go, the next significant step on that piece will be seeing what the Conservation Commission's appetite is for a conservation restriction. But we will also need to finalize that Phase 2 before we can fully bake the definitive plan, because it could impact some component of design. Not that it necessarily matters to this particular board, but their attorney is here and the butters are here. We received a letter from their attorney indicating their thoughts as to the ownership and use of the Chase Street extension, which I think was which was also shared with this board previously. We are obviously in disagreement as to that, but not again, not before the board. And then the only other item that I think is relevant, but not necessarily immediate, is that Massachusetts did very recently pass a 2-year tolling statute for all active and open permits, which does impact some of the permits on this project. The 40B permit itself is vested, but some of the other permits would fall under the scope of that tolling. All of which are active and open now, so, but I'm just mentioning it, so you are made aware.
Carrie, I mean, I will obviously turn it over to the residents, abutters, the public. Carrie, do you have anything? I mean, Carrie, Marguerite, do you have anything?
Not right now. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I think there was a suggestion also that you start to make contact with the town's engineer, consulting engineer, Weston and Sampson. I don't know if you've had any outreach to them.
We have not, but I'm happy to. I can shoot Carrie an email of who I should specifically reach out to. That's not a problem. Carrie did raise that issue. So Carrie did raise it. Whether it's me calling them or them calling me, doesn't make a difference. I'm happy to call them. So I can shoot you an email. If you can send me the contact information, I'll reach out to them.
Who was the last engineer that you knew that we had? Was it probably?
I think you guys were hiring Weston and Sampson the day after I was here last time.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. I remember because it was like we couldn't really talk about it.
So you don't have a,
What's that?
well, so they don't have any knowledge of this project is
Yeah.
part of it. So I think that to the extent that you come in and you want definitive plans approved and you haven't had this
Yes.
preliminary outreach, the thought was to use this time, we know you're not at that stage yet, but to use this time to get all of that done so
Get up
that
to
it can
speed.
be done a little bit more smoothly when the time.
No, I appreciate that.
Rises.
That's a good efficiency. I'm happy to.
Greg, were you even on the board when this first came up?
No.
Yeah, back,
You
this
were?
one?
Yeah.
No. I'm old, but not that old.
I was in middle school, not elementary school.
I think, yeah,
Before I turn it over
I
to the
think I
public,
might be the only one who was.
I will. Any board members have any comments? No.
Not at this time.
All right, I will turn it over to the public. I will do the members on Zoom, but I'll do those who are here first.
I would like to turn it over to my attorney who's
Oh,
on Zoom for
okay.
now, and then I would like to comment.
Okay, sure. Yep. So just state,
Dennis.
yeah, Attorney Murphy, whenever you're ready, just name and that name, not address, just name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dennis Murphy from Hill Law, and tonight I'm here on behalf of the Sayre family. Attorney Glass was accurate in his update, and I appreciate that. We did send a letter. I don't know if the board was copied, but the Sayre family actually owns the fee in what has been called Chase Street Extension. I've got an affidavit from an attorney who's examined the title to that effect. And so our only interest in monitoring this project, which is what the court said was our right to do, is relates to your comprehensive permit from 20 years ago, conditions 45 and 47, which is about trying to use my client's property for laying public utilities to this development. I think I heard correctly that there may be planned changes coming before the board and that they have yet to identify all the access easements. I'd welcome the opportunity to try to resolve this with Attorney Glass and the developer before it comes back to the board. But as it sits right now, my view and the view of our title examiner is that the Sayre property is not public, there is no easement, and there is no right to bring utilities through Chase Street Extension. I just wanted to make sure that position was well known. I think Attorney Glass knows it, now the board knows it. We did put it in writing in a letter a year ago about trespass, and thanks for the opportunity to provide my input.
Carrie, is that something that we have? I know it's not in our packet, right?
You said that was about a year ago, that letter?
If you don't mind resending it at some point, or at least if you have anything more updated.
Yes, I will send that. I'll forward that along. Thank you.
And then I will turn it over to the attorney's client if you would like to say whatever you need to say.
Sure, thank you.
Again, just name and address for the record if you don't mind.
Yes, my name is Ruth Sayre, and the property in question, it's the address won't really matter. It's addresses at the end of Chase Street. One is 707 Green Acres. The other has no number and is off of what's called the Chase Street extension. They're both my property.
Okay.
My great-grandfather's property. And I think what I want to add to what Dennis is saying is that this initial permit was given in 2003 with the premise that utilities crossed my property. But no one has a right to do that. And no construction was supposed to have been started on this site without actual proof of access. And no one stopped them. And I'm sorry, my father died and I've been busy. But this should have been stopped before any construction was started if no one could prove access across my property. It's very simple. So for all the updates that come in from an attorney who approached me and asked me to grant access because they did not have it. So I'm very serious about this. It's why I have an attorney. And overall, they should not be allowed to proceed in any way until they can prove that they have everything they need, and they haven't proved any of it, and they're in their building. And I'm not arguing with the building per se, but they had a permit that said a thing, and the thing isn't what's happening. Okay, so I would really like for this board, yes, there was litigation. Let's go back. Because the board at the time, the zoning board, granted access across my property that was not, at the time, it was my father's, but it's my family's, that they didn't have. And the board granted it. And then when my father sued, the state came back and said, well, we can't actually address the fact that this board messed it up, but we can tell you that you can sue for trespass. So basically they said, no, they can't cross your property. So couldn't we just boil this down and get to the point, which is they don't have access for utilities that they need to do this. They don't have that access. And they needed that access in the first place to do any construction. I'm not arguing overall about construction, but honestly, we should stop it where it is and then let them figure out how to go forward. So that's what I have to say. Thank you, Dennis, for helping to bring that in. And yes, we have the legal documentation on that. Thank you.
Attorney Mitchell, is that anything you can speak to?
Can I speak to one item real quick? I apologize.
Sure.
So, I won't get into the legal back and forth, but there's one thing I do want to clarify because I think it's important to my credibility before this board and the discussions we had. While Mrs. Sear and I had met a number of times regarding a possible settlement design, which also involves her father, we have never taken the position that we don't have access, and I never asked her for access. So I just want to clarify that when I represented to you, as we did with Attorney Agostino and Mr. Madden and Mr. Youngquist last year, we do have a difference of opinion, stipulated to, but we never asked for access, implying that we didn't believe we had it. Other than that, I'll let Attorney Agostino and Mr. Murphy and myself deal with this, as it's not a matter for this board.
I would like to reply to that, please.
Sure.
I have had one meeting with this attorney, and in that meeting, it occurred in Boston. I was there with my daughter. I lived out of town at the time. You were there to argue that you needed the access and that I should give something, that if I did it differently, somehow maybe you would change things. I don't remember exactly, but that was the premise. You may not believe that was the premise. There is nothing in writing, But that was the premise of the approach. And it did come through a meeting with you and another attorney and my father, and I didn't live here at the time. But that's what happened. It's just a matter of memory. And I don't want to have someone misrepresent what happened. Thank you.
Attorney Mitchell, do you have anything?
All I'll say is that the board is, or the town and the board have been aware that there is a dispute over the access rights to this property. It existed at the time that the permit was issued. I don't have the actual language of the conditions in front of me, but I think that that was recognized, and that I believe the condition indicates that if they are unable to bring in utilities through Chase Street Extension, that the petitioner is required to come back to the board with a modification plan, and that modification plan was deemed to be a substantial change ahead of time, and that it would be treated through an open public hearing process.
Yeah, that's Adams 47.
The condition 45 and 47?
45, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's I do believe that if we are planning to bring utilities in somewhere else, we do have to come back before this board. I don't know that it was given a pre-established level of review, but we definitely do have to come back to this board if we're planning on bringing utilities in through a different access point, which we're not currently planning on doing.
I think.
Thank you, this looks great. So again, the idea was that the town was going to leave it to the private parties
Right.
to determine whether or not that access existed. It's my understanding that some of that work was done. I don't know the details of all of it, but there was private right of action that happened. I don't know why it's fully come to a conclusion. I don't think any of that has ever been presented fully to this board, other than we've been told that the litigation is over and there remains a dispute.
Well, in fairness to the Sears, the litigation was over the validity of the 40B permit.
That part of the litigation resolved,
There
correct?
has not been affirmative litigation for what I think Attorney Murphy generally would refer to as trespass.
So yes, I do know that the appeal of the 40B project
Right.
resolved because the court ultimately determined that it's a private matter, and that it wasn't sufficient grounds to pursue the appeal.
Can I respond to that without?
I'm not gonna get into an argument,
No, not
ma'am,
to you,
about
to the
this.
entire thing. Okay.
Again, at this stage, the board has conditions here that it will require the developer to abide by, and the developer has no choice but to continue to abide by those conditions. And any construction that they're doing at this stage is at their own risk. If they're not able to abide by these conditions to bring the utilities down Chase Street Extension, they will need to come back to this board before they can move further with getting a building permit and determine a modification request.
So-
What that is up to them to decide.
If there's any litigation going on between them regarding the trespassing, not the validity of the 40B, but the trespassing, do we still hear the case do we still hear what they're proposing regardless?
Unless there's something that's issued to stop that, the appeal of the 40B process is over.
Right.
Okay, that's what I would like to respond to if I can.
About the 40B process?
About not the 40B, about the other question at hand. Okay, I can do it from here.
Oh, give us a spot.
No, it's fine.
Catch the audio.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
So the other question at hand is in the approval given by this board in 2003, it said no construction was supposed to happen without proof that they could come across my property. That was my property. Or at the time, my dad's, but my family's property. So I'm just saying, maybe we shouldn't just be saying it's a thing between Bruce et al. And me. Maybe the issue is that there's actually a permit that was granted that said they shouldn't be doing anything without proving this.
Carrie,
Proving their access.
Marguerite, sorry, not Carrie. Marguerite, is that what you're looking for now?
Yeah, I don't recall that being the actual way the conditions were worded. I do recall that the issue around Chase Street extension and any work in that area did need to be resolved before any work was done within that area. But I don't think that it prohibited.
But what's the number, Robert? Sorry, it's the one that,
So,
I don't have it in front of me.
Attorney Murphy quoted, condition 45 and 47.
well, I would hope that you would all please look at that, because I understood at the time that it was written by John Witten that the entire premise, and I think some of you know him, you may not, I think you might. The entire premise was that it was meant to sort of say, okay, if you can't come through here, you'd have to come a different way. Like, and you couldn't build anything. Maybe I'm misreading it, but that's what I read when I read that part of it. I don't have it in front of me.
And then whatever new plans that they may put before us may not even, those conditions could change, correct?
They could, but then they would have to come back for a different permit.
Right, a modification to this permit would be required.
Exactly.
So
and that's
Attorney
my
Witten
point.
did not write this decision.
Okay,
No, not the legal decision. In the permit, it's the granting of the permit.
Yes, I know. I was involved in the drafting of that as well. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that the issue around Chase Street extension and the construction within that area does need to be resolved before any work is done. And if it cannot be used the way it was presented to the board, it's very clear in here that they need to come back. And it does say it will be considered a substantial change. And the applicant must return to the ZBA for approval of any proposed alternative. That has to happen. You will not be able to get a building permit. You will not be able to do, you can't, I mean, right now, you're gonna need to have that figured out before you get approval of your definitive plans. That's a reality. The fact that they're deciding to clear land that they own and go through the process with natural heritage is at their own risk. If they cannot do what they're planning on doing, there will come a point in time fairly soon where that's going to have to be determined. And if it's not done the way that it's been laid out in this permit, it will need to happen through a modification request, which is the board has already indicated will be deemed a substantial change. So that means that there is a new public hearing that happens and that all members of the public will be able to come in and comment on whatever those new proposed plans are. I don't know what their options are. And the board never really got into determining what those options were because it didn't need to based on the way it worded these conditions.
Thank you very much for the clarification, because I don't feel like we've heard that all the time before the board, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like, I think that clarification helps to explain the problem, and I will be very clear that there is no access across my property. It's not happening. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Attorney Glass, do you have anything? I mean, I don't want to keep going back and forth on this matter, but do you have anything else regarding the project? I mean,
Attorney Mitchell has a phenomenal memory. I didn't remember that the word substantial change was in
Well,
there.
it helped to have the wording in front of me, so thank you, Carrie, for your organization.
We're aware of this condition.
yeah, okay. Is there, I assume members of the public is just the Attorney Murphy that's on. I assume there are no other residents. I only see John and ourselves on the Zoom. Carrie, there's no one else on there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do you feel like you'll need to be on our next agenda? Next month's agenda, excuse me, which would be the 28th. It's more just it's more just a question of curiosity more than anything. It's not so much a request that you are, it's more of a question.
I don't anticipate that it would be required. I don't think it would be a good use of your time, but if something changes, far enough in advance to make it worthy of your time, we'll send the request in to Carrie and the chair can take it up.
Okay, because as of right now we have one potential case before, case before us, but that's going to be
Potential, but they haven't updated their application. We're
right.
still
So as of
waiting
right
on
now,
that.
if something were to come up and they want to, there's still room for them on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds good.
Appreciate your time this evening.
We will move down to item 6, which is correspondence. Carrie, I knew you gave us something, but first we'll go over the quick one. So we did have word from the planning board accepting our joint meeting to discuss.
Correct.
They propose a date of
Wednesday, January 15th at 7 p.m.
And just for the record, that is not their regular meeting, correct?
Yes, it is,
Okay,
actually.
I knew
They
we were
didn't
saying that
have
we didn't want to burden their agenda with it. If that's the date they suggested, then I just didn't want them to feel like we were looking to do that. If it's the day that works best for them, that's obviously fine, but I didn't want them to feel like,
No, I gave them both options. I asked them if they wanted to hold a special meeting or do it during a regular session meeting, and they chose regular session.
okay, so it'll be their meeting, we're an agenda item on it.
And, I'm
Yeah,
sorry?
Yeah, what time is their
7th.
meeting?
And they'll be here, and Jim Aguilar is scheduled to be here
I was gonna
as
ask
well.
my next question, he's gonna be there.
Yep.
Okay. The next, not often that we get other correspondence. But
So
we
I,
do have a course, do you have something else besides this?
let's see, which one do you have?
Dayton Electric Light District?
Yes, that's what I'm pulling, yeah.
So we have, I can't read the signatures. Is that Sumidiris, as in the old
Yeah.
town clerk Sumidiris?
Yes.
And what are the other names on there? Just excuse me, it's not.
Oh, wait, it's at the top. Donnie Burt and Mark Pacheco.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry, up top. I see it. I didn't see it up top. Okay, so this was sent to us on November 13th, 2024, to the zoning board of appeals and myself as chair, regarding the review of projects prior to board approval. Dear Chairman Karen, we hope this letter finds you well and serves as a friendly reminder of the electric district's potential role in projects that may become before your respective board and approval. The electric light district, the electric district, I assume the electric light district is the same thing as the electric district?
Yeah.
Okay, and just making sure that I'm not, okay. So the heading of the letter says Dayton Electric District. In the body, it just says the electric district. I'm just making sure. The electric district is the local governing authority for streetlights within its boundaries, which have been expanded to include the entire town of Dayton. As a result, certain projects brought before your boards do require the installation of streetlights, or are often proposed by the developer or butters when permitting a project. Per the district's regulations, all petitioners for additional or new street lighting must be approved by the district commissioners. Per the regulations, the petitioner is to supply the commissioners with a lighting plan and specifications for its review and approval. For your convenience, we have included a copy of the district bylaws and regulations. We would ask that in the future, your respective boards and the planning board and zoning office send commissioners copies of plans and petitions that either impact or propose new street lighting. The main reason is that the district can only service certain types of lights to its contractors. We hope to be able to provide a detailed list of equipment that the district could, that the district could service and accept a streamline in this process. If we have any further questions or like to discuss this process, we would be happy to arrange a time to meet. Respectfully, Sumidiris, Donald Burt, and Mark Pacheco. They have included their board's rules and regulations as we have ours, and their bylaws.
Yeah.
Did we mess up on something?
No.
Okay.
Because I actually, as soon as we got that, I called them right away and I said.
I was
"Oh."
gonna say, usually one gets in all walks of life, not just
Yeah.
in town, but one gets a letter like this is don't do that again.
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
saying they did that,
No.
but like I was like, oh my god.
So just,
But-
just to make sure that
Yeah.
I was doing what I needed to do, I called them to say, did I forget? Did something get forgotten? She said, oh no, this is just a formality,
Okay.
year-end, yearly thing. And I said, okay.
So, for example, when and if we get to sidewalks and all that kind of trees for across the
Well,
street,
in this particular instance,
With
it would be
that-
for the
that would-
lights. That would
qualify.
They would have to go.
Oh.
Yeah, right?
So
No.
Carrie, I have a question.
Problem is that that's a local board. And
So it's a local
This is a
board.
pre-permitted 40B.
Okay.
Oh, in
And it
that
sounds
speci-
like
in that
it's a
specific case,
Newly
okay.
created commission.
So, in their bylaws, in their bylaws, Article 2. okay, that's just mentioning where, so it includes the entire, I guess what I'm a little confused by is that it's streetlights within its boundaries, I expected to include the entire town of Dayton. So then they said positions that either impact or propose new street lighting. I mean, it's not often that we get that. Is this one of those things that do we give them a copy in case it comes up, or only if the plans that we are submitted involve it? Only if, okay, Margaret, you're nodding head.
I would assume that it's not really necessary to add them to your regular rotation of people that you
That's what
see
thank you for
comment from.
clarifying. That's what I'm trying to say.
But if, it really depends on you, Carrie, is it easier to send it to them and let them make that determination?
Usually I do.
You send it.
So,
to
I
them?
mean, we don't get a lot here because it's more for subdivisions
Right.
and stuff like
And
that.
it's not like before any applicants or anything here, oh, is this another board I have to go before? No, it's not one of those like, oh, now you go to Code of Concom. It's not that kind of thing. It's more just like another, the way we reach out to fire if they have any comment, police if they have any question. It's more like, do we I mean, if it's not going to be a huge burden, I don't mind including the rotation, but like I said, it's not often that we get something. It's one of those things that during the regular meeting, should something come up, I guess we would hold off on voting until we get their input, pretty much is what they're
Zach,
asking.
let me ask a question then, because, for example, from the case that we just heard in front of us, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm just asking. The case that we just heard, obviously we don't have anything yet going forward, but we also have the conditions. We have those 90-something conditions. I'm assuming in those conditions, even though it's from a long time ago, it talks somewhere about streetlights.
So one thing that Marguerite just said was that I used the case of Stonegate just now as an example, and she said because that's a pre-existing 40B, and this is a local, and it's a local board that it might not be included.
So if it was a new 40B coming before you, then they would need to seek a waiver from any of the requirements that the commission might
A
have.
new 40B.
That pertains to, that they were not complying with. If it was not for your existing 40Bs, they don't have to go and get a waiver now.
Right.
Because it's been put in existence since that 40B was permitted.
Right.
However, it might be something that they might be willing to, because one of the comments here was that if there's a repair needed, they only have certain contractors that they work with.
Right.
So it may not be something that they're opposed to doing, and it might be worthwhile to mention to them, similar to the way that we talked about the playground commissioner.
Right, okay, I
With
see what you're
Stonegate
saying.
Landing, you know,
Right.
that these people do have a little bit more expertise. They can't mandate it on the board, on the developer, but it might be worthwhile for the developer to at least, you know, if they're making a choice between products and they know this is one the town can continue to repair.
So I guess to John's question, so for our request, when and if that might be something that
We may want to talk to them
that
about
may
it.
come up depending on what their plans are.
You know, when the definitive plan set comes in, it might be worthwhile to send that to them, but they can't mandate. They can't
And I think
mandate.
I'm sorry, the other part of the question then would be, for example, if you have an existing 40B, such as, you know, Stony Ridge Estates or the Pines or others in towns that are completed, that's one thing, unless they're gonna add more lighting, I imagine. But if you have a project which is still under construction or, more importantly, hasn't started construction yet, those are three different things.
Right.
Do any of those supersede the other, Marguerite, to bring this into play?
She's shaking her head no.
It does not supersede it, Jonathan, in any way, because they've all been permitted. So
Okay,
none of
thank
them
you.
can mandate compliance, and none of them can even mandate that a waiver be sought. You could mandate that a waiver be sought if it was a new 40B application that was coming before you.
Okay, thank you.
But you cannot mandate either a waiver or compliance with anything that's already been permitted. However, it's a good point to raise, Jonathan, for both the ones that are in construction and the ones that haven't started yet, that it might be worthwhile to send a copy of plan sets to them in case there's any input that they want to provide, as essentially gratuitous input is where they're at this stage.
Right. Kerry also I mean, I assume no action is needed, just wanted more, just to let us know. But we don't have to vote, there's no votes for anything we take, it's just more of an FYI for that.
For what?
The electric light district, were they
No.
for correspondence back and
No,
forth?
it was
or
just an FYI.
Okay, I mean, if you wanna give them a courtesy to, cause as we discussed, we don't like not knowing this, so if you wanna just let them know that we read and discussed it, and certainly keep them in mind, just so they at least know that we read it.
Yep.
Then we also have before us, I can't believe I'm saying this, the 2025 meeting calendar. Looking ahead, it looks like we're going to have an issue next year again with our November and December meetings.
Yes.
That's something we should book a space now.
Well, I mean, you're more than welcome if you want to solve it now. I just wanted to highlight it at least now to give you guys a year to think about it.
I think that's the only one. I mean, I don't know when school vacation is in April, but that's kind of, I don't want to say that's not important, but like that's not usually a big one. Yeah. We do have the 27th of May, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. We could see something come up for someone that's going on a long weekend somewhere, but I don't think that's worth trying to reschedule that one now. I don't think it's stupid to try to to try to change our 25th and 23rd. The nightmare, don't mean it that way. We can't do, it was
the scramble.
It also was a big thing because who we needed to be at these meetings. It wasn't so much of a space; it was more who we needed to be. So I mean, I know I'm not saying everyone should know their plans, but is it worth trying to? So like looking at the November one, moving it up, we could move it up to the 18th, and if we move it back, it'd be putting it December 2nd, which is a Tuesday next year. And then our December meeting would be the 23rd. Moving it back is the day before New Year's Eve, but not New Year's Eve. I mean, what do you think, Carrie? I mean, you're the one that has to find us a space. What do you think? Do you think it's worth trying to pre-book something now, or do we just let it go until the time comes?
So are you thinking of just doing like 1 week prior?
We could do that for the 25th, because that would fall on the 18th, which doesn't really conflict with anything. Same thing for December, move it to the 16th, or move it back to the 30th, but people still travel, and that's still a holiday.
That's
holiday.
usually a dead
It's still a
week.
holiday. You're going on vacation during that
Yeah.
week this year, so I mean, I would say we move the 25th to the 18th, and then the 23rd to the 16th of December.
Okay.
What's up, John?
I was just going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to propose that we don't do anything, and the only reason for that is, number one, we have no clue what's going to come before us, or even if we're going to meet, and more importantly, we don't know if when we meet, we need Marguerite to be present, and we're going to be dictated by when we meet is going to determine her ability to be present if we need her.
I do know what you're saying, because then I was thinking the same thing, but also we know we're not going to meet November 25th. We know we're not going to meet that day. So you're right. Maybe we don't necessarily have to book another day today, but we just got to know we're not meeting this November 25th, and we're not meeting December 23rd next year. So we know the two meeting dates that we're going to have to change.
Yeah, that I would agree with. But I think
as
to
to
put to etch a date right now depends on if there's anything before us and whether or not Marguerite's presence is needed.
It's a good point, but also, like I was saying before, and it wasn't last minute. I don't mean it that way, but it was also like if we knew in July, November and December were going to be tough, would it have been as hard trying to nail down a date? I'm not saying we were procrastinating. I do not mean it that way. I just mean
this way we're prepared.
We can always move it again if we have to. I mean,
yeah.
I honestly think that we'd probably be dealing with Abercrest as all the other conditions around that
Right.
time anyway, so Marguerite will be needed.
So if that's the case, then I would say that my preference would be that you move it to the weeks
to
before.
what, Marguerite, sorry?
To the weeks before,
Yeah.
in November and December.
Make November 25th the 18th.
Yeah.
And make the 23rd the 16th.
Yep. And I do have, if I'm looking at this calendar, I do know that I would not be able to make the April meeting as scheduled and the July meeting as scheduled. I believe July, I don't know for sure, I've got to double check my weeks.
Okay.
But again, if I'm needed for a meeting on those days, I think those are easier months to schedule.
They are, right.
And-
Or moving it to a Wednesday if we have to, or right.
Or perhaps I'm not needed.
It's more the holiday time now. It's not just, let's just pick any month that might know. I mean, that's certainly good to know, but it was more the holiday months that we know, like, we meet the perfect storm where we're holiday, we can't move up, that's another holiday, so.
Yeah, so I would suggest that, at least for now, if you wanted to redo November and December, I'll put those in my calendar and hold those days in case I'm needed, and if I can't make it, I'll let you know.
Right,
You know.
and I mean, I do know what John's saying, like, we have no idea, but also, because we know what could potentially be coming down, that would be right in the thick of it, potentially.
More fun.
I just in the thick of it.
You know, they're real fun.
I just, well, yeah, I know. So, Carrie, does the town calendar let you change that now?
Yeah,
Okay, so I guess, I'm not saying the second now, I just mean, like, I didn't know if, like, oh, you have to wait till the first of
tomorrow
the year.
morning when I go in, I'll make sure that everything is all set.
Mr. Chairman, when we do deal with the 40Bs, we make a condition of time of meeting of shutting off.
Absolutely.
Because I've left here and it's been foggy in the morning, like 1:30, 12:30.
I know, the first one I was involved was Strawberry Fields, and I was traveling for work, and I remember being in a hotel, traveling for work in New Hampshire, and it was 11:30, I'm like, I have to be
And
up
it
at
was
4. I
Marguerite
have to be
going
up at
back and
4.
forth with the lawyers, and I'm.
I wasn't here for that one, but I know.
Because I really don't, that's between them what they were discussing, but I was so tired. I was like, oh my God.
It's funny.
We did it back to back, too.
I remember years ago when I was little, sitting in with my dad and Ken Pacheco and Ken Rebello when they were looking at the first Strawberry Fields when it wasn't called that, but it was apartments. I remember I was just a kid sitting, I was like, I want to go. My dad's like, I don't think you do. I was like, I do. And I was like, oh my God. And now look what's happened.
Bad decision.
But no, I remember like, and I'm like, they're talking forever about fire trucks. I was like, you serious? But it was because of the multiple stories and getting the fires in the back. I remember like it was yesterday. But like, I remember leaving, being like, Dad, I have school tomorrow. Dad's like, you want to go?
I remember that.
There's one more item of correspondence.
What's that?
There's one more item of correspondence.
Regarding
Oh.
bylaw violation.
Yeah, the very last one.
Keep digging. Yeah, it's yours.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was all in that same pack. I thought it was all involved. Thank you, Lisa. Would have moved on. I thought it was all part of the same thing. Oh, right. Okay. So, this is sent from Jim Aguiar. This was serviced in hand, but it was sent to Jeffrey P. Rodriguez, 46, Desmond Ave, Somerset. Notice of zoning bylaw violation, property location 2040 County Street, Dayton, Mass. To whom it may concern, the building department has been made aware via complaint that commercial activity exists on this property that is creating a nuisance for the neighboring residential properties. Your property is specifically operating vehicles and other equipment during the overnight hours. Therefore, you are in violation of the following town bylaw. The following violations of the Dayton zoning bylaws were detected. One, which was 3400 environmental protection standards, and then a sub underneath that, 3420 standards. No use shall be allowed if it will cause sound, noise, vibration, odor, or flashing, except for warning devices, temporary construction, maintenance works, parades, recreational or agricultural activities, or other special circumstances, perceptible without instruments more than 200 feet from the boundaries of the originating premises, if in a non-residential district, more than 40 feet from the boundaries of originating premises, if in a residential district, unless otherwise specified herein. However, the Board of Appeals may grant a special permit for an exception for activities not meeting these standards in cases where the board determines that no objectionable conditions are thereby created for the use of other affected properties. You must cease illegal operations immediately. This notice may be appealed by any person aggravated by filing an appeal with the Dayton Zoning Bylaw, Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals within 30 days of this notice. Applicable monetary fines will commence immediately. Respectfully, Jim Aguiar. This is something that I don't know if anyone else on the board, I think pretty much just me has been aware of, and I even talked to my dad, not as father. I mean, I talked to him not as father, but as a chairman, former chairman, and selectman. we don't have a curfew. So that's what, before I knew that this bylaw existed, I was like, how do we enforce that? I was like, we don't have a curfew like most towns and cities do. And my dad was like, it's something that really Dayton hasn't really ever needed to impose. But I was like, there must be something holding it, right. This is before I was aware of this. I was like, what about a noise complaint? That's not related to a curfew. That's a noise complaint. And then, so come to find out, we did have this. So, is this something that? So this was dated October 2nd. Obviously, we're like December 2nd. We haven't received
any
anything.
appeal, no.
So, and I assume they stopped.
I have not heard anything as of today. I know attorney.
Is everyone on the board aware of what I'm talking about? Is this new to anybody that we're talking about? Has anyone heard of this before now?
No, what is it?
So,
Zach, I've heard of this in the past, and something else I was involved in town. However, what I'm speculating here is that this is more of Jim Aguirre informing us as to what he's done up to this point. Whether or not they want to go forward and appeal this before he takes any other action potentially is up to them, or, if they've mitigated it, we may not even hear anything else about it.
Right.
True, and John made a good point. Within the 30 days was the appeal to what Jim said. They still may come before us looking for a special permit.
Correct.
That may happen. Which obviously we cannot discuss, and we will not discuss in detail because we have nothing before us, but it's something to keep on our radar. So this was, is it called Dayton Sawmill, quote unquote? I've heard people refer to it as the Sawmill.
That's how I always,
Right now, it's a mechanic shop.
It's right here on the corner of Main and...
Yeah, right next to Rochelle's.
the property.
Mr. Chairman, I do think since at least Mr. Aguirre sent this to us, it might, if nothing else, make sense to ask Carrie to simply send him a memo and ask him if this matter has been resolved. We're not looking for a solution. We're not looking to get involved. We're simply asking if it's been resolved or adjudicated at this point.
I mean, concerning this...
Just as a matter of record.
We certainly can. I mean, we, as of right now, have... I mean, this letter was sent to the owner October 2nd. It's now December 2nd. And
right, but it was probably CC'd to us, so I think we have nothing to lose by it if it was CC'd to us by at least asking if it's been resolved.
We can let him know that we read it into the minutes, and it's something that we'll keep on our radar. And if you want to let him know, if we do get a special permit for it, we will be reaching out to him to probably come to that meeting. Again, I'm assuming we're not going to, considering it's been 2 months.
So we can't discuss this piece of property?
Oh, we can, but I'm saying we couldn't say how we would vote on the special permit because it's not before us.
How old are you?
32.
Okay, and you knew it as what?
I heard people call it the Dayton Sawmill.
This has always had a noise ordinance there. It's always been a sawmill. Guys to cut chainsaws, used to work on chainsaws, you had all kinds of burned wood out there. This gentleman is went in there, they allowed him to put up 2 containers with a roof line over the top of it as a permit for a commercial property. I'm not saying, I don't know what the complaint was, what it is.
I think it was noise,
I think he probably is working there at night. They do heavy equipment, trailers, trucks.
Right.
Diesel work and stuff like that. I don't understand the environment one. I did see some things that were concerning me on that as well. But as for the noise ordinance, it was always a sawmill. It was always used as commercial, whether it was zone commercial or not, I don't know.
Right.
And I just used you an example because you knew what it was at a young age.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's always been a sawmill.
Yeah.
It's always had
Greg,
loud noise.
do you know, Greg, if they ever came before ZBA to ask for any permit or anything to do any other work there, and if there were any conditions?
There was nothing that I know of, and it was always a business. It's never been nothing but a business.
I think when he used the word permit, he meant building permits, not permit from us.
Yeah,
But-
they got a building permit to put it, because I remember I was gonna do something similar with 2 containers, and I was wondering if it's an accessory structure, it was gonna be a structure, and I still had to pull a permit for it, so I know there was a permit pulled for the work that's going on over there. And maybe, like I say, if he does come in front of us for a violation, we gotta maybe put a condition of work order like ours, and maybe we change something in our bylaws that most towns have, 9 o'clock, that's it.
I think when I was reiterating to the conversation with my dad, I mentioned the word curfew, but I think I meant to say quiet, like quote unquote quiet hours.
Yeah.
So, because like what's interesting is that with the bylaw, it's overnight. So what if I'm starting at 9 p.m. but I'm done at 11?
Night is what?
Is that over?
PM to AM.
Right, that's night. Is that overnight, or is it? So that's where it's like, you know, hypothetically in the future, it might be something that we look at is putting time numbers.
So I think one thing one thing I'd like to highlight.
Yeah, sure.
Is, you're right, we don't have a noise ordinance. That would have to, the town would have to call for a general bylaw. That wouldn't be under the zoning.
Oh,
That
right,
would
no,
be a
I know,
general
I know.
bylaw. The other issue is, so I think he referenced 3400 because that's the main section.
Right.
And then the subsection. So I don't think there was an environmental part, except for that it was the noise.
The standard just falls
It was the actual
underneath that.
noise.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, so it's Route 138, right? And that's there's a overlay, right? Isn't there an overlay that goes all the way down?
CBS or something that.
They had told me
Something
years
like
ago.
that,
talk about
I
but-
remember this, yeah.
Yeah.
This business, or the owner, has been in business, from what I've been able to gather, even before the zoning bylaws went into effect. Right, so, I mean, he's been there
So it must be in
forever.
I mean, like I said,
Sawmill.
Or at least, it's been a
what it
sawmill
was.
since
That's what I know
before
it
the
as.
zoning went into effect. So, they did, come before the planning board for a site plan review to get the approval of that the structure. And they
Right.
did get that.
but they were doing work before that anyway.
But they what?
They were doing work in there on that property that made noise before that anyway.
Correct. So then, but now what I'd like to point out on this is that it's stating that it's a noise issue, no strict hours, but it's the decimals. And what's happening is there's an apartment across the street where a family's living directly across the street, and they're the ones that are being affected.
Because they're trying to take big lug nuts off trucks and
Yeah.
banging.
So it's not a turn down your music, it's midnight, it's too loud, not necessarily when, I mean, I think both affect it, but it's the,
Correct.
so almost putting in a 10 o'clock to, it's like, that's not saying it's had nothing to do with it, it's more the level of noise.
It's the level of noise. That's what he cited them
the
on.
environmental comes into play.
Correct.
The whole
That's how it's
time of
funded.
night is more of a keep peace with your neighbors and like
Yeah.
keep the community, you know,
Happy.
but it's more the sound comes to the environmental aspect. That's probably
Correct.
that falls under it.
That's what the environmental part is for that special section for the noise. So at this time, Jim went on vacation, and
dare you
as
go
of
to
that date, he did not have any more activity, but I know he was looking for the citation book just in case.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything since, and I think he's still on vacation, due back next week. So, but I'll be
How
sure
did
to
this
send
first
him an
come
email.
before us? You asked me or Jim?
For what?
Like, how did this first get on our radar? Did Jim email you and I at the same time about this? Because this came up to you
Jim
and I.
asked me, and then I asked you to
Right,
reach out to.
right. I was trying to think, like, it's because it's been so long. I was trying to forget, like,
Correct.
this never came before the board. I hear him assume that they know, but like they wouldn't have because it wasn't
Right.
really a board discussion topic. But
It was,
but
no, it wasn't.
So it's a mixed overlay district in that area.
I think it's a mixed overlay. I'm trying to remember.
One thing that, like I said,
It would
it's
have
kind of
to
like
be.
somebody moving into a house next door to a farm in the dead of winter, and then all of a sudden come in front of us in the spring and the summer and saying, I can't stand the smell. So it's due diligence. It's a business. It's always been a business.
Yes.
I'm not trying to stop the man
No.
working there. So when you say we put a cease and desist, does that mean he can't work at all?
so yeah, that's a good
No,
question.
how this
When
reads.
he says you
No,
must,
he can still work during.
Simply says he has to abide by these environmental standards.
so
So
you must cease
Okay.
the illegal operations immediately. The
Heat,
illegal
sound,
operations
noise,
being
yeah.
of that bylaw that's being violated.
that's perceptible without instruments from more than 200 feet from the boundaries of the originating premises if it's in a non-residential district, or more than 40 feet from the boundaries of the originating premises in a residential district. I don't remember which one this is in, but that's the decibel, that's the distance, sound distance that they need to abide by. it's my understanding that the noise issues have arisen since the building that was given site plan review went into operation. I don't think this is a noise, I may be wrong, but it was not presented to me as being a noise issue that was pertaining to the grandfathered use that's there. It's a noise issue that's pertaining to the more recent work that's being done in the more recently permitted buildings.
Oh, I got you.
And so, yes, there is a possibility that you may get a special permit request in front of you. And if so, then you'll have to address that, you know, with conditions and probably some type of certified audio plan of some sort. And that's new to me, so I would defer to whatever the experts in this area tell us. And then the other option is that they have adjusted their operation so that there's no longer an issue, and this isn't a problem. And then there's also some other legal options that I've talked to the building inspector about pursuing if they have not stopped operating. But the time to appeal the cease and desist is over.
Go ahead, John.
My question was just in what Marguerite just said, and I may have missed her comment on this, because it faded out a little bit. In the 200 feet or the 40 feet, does it give a specific decibel level, like 60 decibel, 80 decibel, and is that defined anywhere?
No, it says you cannot hear, the requirement is that at that distance, there should not be sound, noise, vibration, odor, or flashing perceptible without instruments.
That's great.
So,
Okay.
you know,
So anybody?
So, I mean, I have a drum set.
Sawmill before, and you hear the high-pitched whine
well, it's
sound,
200 feet from the originating premises.
That's all
Right,
day.
so if you hit drums that loud.
Right.
That's that's a lot of feet. That's a big, right, okay, that's a big,
Yeah.
that's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Does this ordinance, I just want to know, does this ordinance apply to raccoons and fisher cats?
I wish it did.
Nope.
All right.
I wish it had to drum. God,
right to
good
farm.
question, John.
Wow.
All right, is there a motion on the floor to approve the meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2024?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Roll call vote.
Greg Logan.
Susan Pritchard.
Zachary Karen.
I, David Phillips.
Elise Vincent, aye.
Board members, do we have anything else?
Jonathan Gale was aye. Worse.
We were doing the roll call for you, I hope so. Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Zachary Karen.
Aye.
I, David Phillips.
Yep.
Elise Vincent, aye.
Hi, Greg Logan.
All set.